workshop. We're here in New York to talk about the relationship between drums and bass. We've got some of the greatest bass players in New York talking with us, and they're going to give us some great tips and their thoughts about the relationship of the bass with the drums in straight ahead jazz in particular. What better place to talk about this than New York? All right, so I hope you all enjoy it. Here we go. What do you want to hear from a drummer? Like, what's the first general thing you want to hear?
The form.
Structure, right?
Yes, the structure, yes.
We talked about that in the last workshop, and it's super important, okay? When you approach jazz, structure is a major issue. Nobody really talks about that a lot. But what's the first thing another musician? Form, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next thing?
Dynamics. But that kind of ties into form.
Mm.
Because, the dynamics kind of color the structure of the song. But that goes into the construction of the song. So dynamics help immensely.
Okay.
And so that kind of is tied in. But assertiveness. But that also ties into form, because you have to, help shape the form with assertiveness, with authority, and with confidence.
That's very interesting, because we, in the drumming community, we talk about a lot of technical things. There's not a lot of talk about these things. And when you come to a place like New York, this is, or when you're out in the professional world, even in Germany, Austria, wherever, you play with the top cats, and this is what they want to hear. Okay, Jennifer Vincent. Okay, you got it from her. Thanks.
Bye. Okay.
For someone who's listening and has good time, good imagination, dynamics.
Great. Okay, yeah.
I want to hear intensity, and also, ideals. Someone who's just listening to everyone in the band. A good pulse, a good beat.
Yeah. Right. Like driving.
Yeah.
Right.
Someone who's moving the music forward. Just making things happen in the music, listening to the vocal or the soloists. Complimenting.
Right. Interaction.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. The first thing that hits you, the most important thing.
Good time and feel. That's the most important thing. I playing jazz, playing straight ahead jazz, where it's walking. I'm listening a lot to the ride cymbal and where he's putting that time wise and feel wise. Because that helps me feel. Because I'm going to feel, things in a certain way,
right.
And obviously whoever I'm playing with is going to feel things in their way. So.
Right.
The quickest way for me to lock in with what the drummer's doing is if what he's doing is on point.
So what about the ride specifically do you like to listen to?
Well, the articulation, and
good.
where I want to hear what he's playing. As long as I can hear, the where it's dang 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 dang, or just dang 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 dang, whatever.
Right.
Whatever rhythm they choose to play, I just want to hear that it's that the time is there and not like fluctuating, and that the feel is there.
Great.
Then after that, a lot of the stuff on the snare drum is almost like comping.
Right.
Like the piano would be.
So comping would be the second issue.
Would be jazz is different from, like, say, playing funk or rock, where then I'm more focused on the bass drum.
Right.
Because it's a more grounded kind of thing. Whereas jazz, where you have more of that triplet, 2 against 3 kind of feel.
Right.
There's more. It's a little looser, I guess.
Right.
Where it's feel wise.
Great.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. That
Okay.
helps. Right on. Thanks, brother Ariel. Right on. What's the first thing you want to hear from a drummer?
Especially in a jazz context, is the consistency of their ride cymbal and their time. That's where we link up mostly. With an upright bass, it's me and the ride cymbal. That's the quarter note. Everything else you're doing, that's your coloring and texturing. It's not as important for the heartbeat of the band, but that ride cymbal and then the hi-hat, that's got to be there. It's got to be just really, really consistent.
So the relationship, you're listening to the ride most of all, right?
Yeah, that's where I link up with. Yeah.
Okay.
That's cause the bass is really kind of a lot of the time of the band. It's the bass and the ride cymbal is where the time is. Everything else, as a drummer in jazz, you have the luxury or the artistic creativity to color, to make signposts of sections. There's a lot of things that you can do conducting wise. You're not necessarily restricted to just timekeeping. You're in a lot of ways like the conductor of the band. You're setting up sections. I think, really think of yourself as the conductor of the band. Like I think generally every great band is really reflective of how great the drummer is in setting up the form and the construction of the tune. It's up to you to kind of really think about the contour of the song, with the dynamics. All of that is so much really dependent on the drummer. And so much of it is fed by and created by the drummer. So I think that way. Think of like really be sensitive to the entire ensemble, and conduct the band, conduct the form, re-interact with the soloist. If it's a vocalist, give the vocalist something. There's always a special relationship between vocalists and drummers, saxophonists and drummers, the soloist and the drummer. It's almost like a duo the entire time. Not totally like a duo. You got to be supportive, but the interaction is right there.
Interaction.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, great. Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, brother.
Right on, man.
That was my pleasure, man. Have fun, guys, and remember, have fun.
Have fun.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you want to hear from a jazz drum?
Time.
Okay. Time. How?
Well, people often talk about ahead of the beat, behind the beat. All that stuff's well and good, but I like to think of it as you need a quarter note. So you can play on top of the beat, but the quarter note has to be solid. Because let's face it, on top of the beat, behind the beat, you're all talking about relativity. Like I always think of behind the beat, in front of the beat, in relation to the drummer. So if I'm going to play on top of the beat, it's because I'm playing on top of the drummer, but that doesn't mean I'm rushing. So I know there's sometimes I play with drummers who they play on top of the beat, but then it's always like building. It's like the time's always incrementally getting just a tick faster, and then that's rushing. Or guys that they like to play on the backside of the beat, but then the quarter note starts slipping. The backside of it should be the backside of where I'm putting my quarter note, and you're going to be the backside of that, but then they're staying at the same tempo throughout that. So it can be tricky. I played with a drummer recently that was just, depending on the style of music, some things where, you get into a swing tune, and I'd say it just felt heavy. Right. There's this constant, just like, air brake. Kind of like pulling things back a little bit, Right. So then I would I realized, okay, I'm going to start interjecting more upbeats into my playing to kind of like goose them up, maybe give them a hint. And because I've never been one of those bass players that say, yo, man, you're dragging. Right. I just deal with it, and I'll try to find a musical solution to it, just make it happen. But yeah, time is what I need from a drummer. You could have zero vocabulary as far as I'm concerned. But if you got a quarter note, especially, whether you're playing funk or swing, I'm just saying quarter note, rhythm, the pulse. You don't need any chops. If you want to show them the... Oh yeah, I got that. Just to remind myself, tattoo a quarter note. Whether I'm playing upright or electric, that's the...
Okay, great. So drive is important to you, but also the ability to determine when to lay back or when to push ahead or something like that. So time, is that correct?
Yeah. Well, because what you're talking about sometimes laying back, pushing ahead. Now you're talking about musicality.
Okay. Well,
that's important. Okay. Because there's times you listen to Thad Jones charts or Basie charts, or whatever. There's times where that it's not complete. The quarter note's not completely metronomic from beginning to end. It might swim a little bit. You know? Of course, it swims too much in the other direction, and it just doesn't sound right. But the music will breathe. What's
the second thing you want to hear from a drummer?
Man, just musicality.
Okay. See, I knew that was gonna be the next thing.
Yeah.
So, can you please talk about musicality for a second? What about the drummer that you want to hear?
Well, when you show up behind a kit or behind a bass, you're creating music. And there's drummers I play with that are very good drummers, but they sit down onto the gig, and they'll play drums well, you know. But then there's a guy that might sit down behind a kit and he'll play the drums well, but then he's paying just so much more attention to the details of what's going on. He's listening to the vocalist or the horn player, the bass player, and the piano player, and he's kind of all of a sudden creating an arrangement from beginning to end, every time, every tune. You know, that's what makes drummers sound great. You know, you could be the greatest musician in the world, but if you're out for yourself and you're not taking care of the composition, then you're never going to sound as good as you could.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Very good. Phil Palumbi, my main man here.
Phil Maturano, my main man. Phil Squared.
Phil Squared. He's a bass player. This is my kid. He's on my kid. He's really a bass player, not a drummer. See? Peace. So initially, when I first thought of this video, I wanted to interview lots of bass players, but I quickly realized that they were all saying kind of the same thing. No matter how many bass players I would interview, it would have ended up the same. The most important thing to great bass players in New York, people who are working a lot, is musicality, dynamics, time, keeping the structure, taking care of the music, interaction, and supporting the soloist. If you keep these things in mind, you'll be well on your way to the next level in playing jazz. So it's good to remember that this is a highly interactive genre of music. The more you keep these things in mind, the better you're gonna sound.